Hey YouTube, Kiratwick here, bringing you all an update to my Duston Yugioh deck profile for July 2023. I always love updating this deck. It's a real deck that focuses on just making the goal of it to annoy your opponent and swarm the field with many different Duston monsters. Now, the one weakness, obviously, of the deck is the main play originally for Dustons is that they weren't able to be tributed, used for fusion, synchro, exceeds, but you can use them for link monsters. So you are giving a lot of resources to your opponent. So with this deck, you at least want to clear out those monsters or get out some of the other Duston monsters like Star Duston to make it so your opponent can't do anything with the Dustons that you give them on the field. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters for our Duston lineup. We are running 3 copies of House Duston. When this face-up card on the field is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, either by battle and by effect, and if it was face up at the start of damage step or by that card effect face up and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon any Duston monsters of your choice from your hand and or deck to anywhere on the field, but you must special summon an equal number of Duston monsters on each side, so you can give yourself more of the beneficial Dustons. A lot of them don't have the best of, quote, beneficial card effects, but still, as long as you have an equal number on each side, you can give yourself 5 different Duston monsters on the field thanks to this card, and then use those resources on main phase 2 to get out a bunch of different extra deck monsters. For some of the lower numbers for the Duston monsters, we run 2 copies of Red Duston. A lot of them will get cloggy otherwise, so we're running 2 ofs for the good majority of the rest of the Dustons, and they all have the limitation where they cannot be used as fusion, synchro, or exceeds material for a summon. And while this face-up card's on the field, it can also not be tributed, and when this card on the field is destroyed, the controller takes 500 damage. So with this card, it's one you definitely want to give to your opponent. Since the controller takes the 500 damage, you don't want to leave yourself with a Red Duston, otherwise you'll be taking the 500 points of damage. The next one is Green Duston. With this one, when it's face up on the field, having the same restrictions, and when this card on the field is destroyed, the controller targets one spell or trap they control and return that target to the hand. So it's not the worst of the Dustons, definitely one you can have for yourself, since you'll just bounce a spell or trap you control. So even if you just set a card on the field, it can be bounced back onto the field for you again. And also 2 copies of Yellow Duston. When this card on the field is destroyed, the controller targets one monster in their graveyard, shuffle that target into the deck. So it's recycle power, so definitely another one that's more beneficial for you to give and not really needed on your opponent's side, with the last of the effect monster Dustons being 2 copies of Blue Duston. When this card is destroyed, banish 1 random card from its controller's hand face down till the standby phase of the next turn. So this can take a resource out of your opponent's hand as well, so it's another Duston you definitely want to give to your opponent, since it can just take away that card resource from them, with the last of the 5 original Duston being 2 White Duston. It's just a normal monster, so once again, just a resource you can give to yourself and have no restriction, and it also leaves us open to a option play for Link Spider to give us a normal summon special summon onto the field using the other one we controlled also. So the multiple ones we have, you can special summon out another one. If we have the 1 White Duston in the hand, we can give us the 1 additional one off the special summon and 4 other ones on the field. For the last of the Duston monsters, we really haven't had too many updates for the Duston deck if we were to get any other type of Duston, but our big boss monster is Star Duston. I may potentially even run this card at 3 if I were to do so. I'll show you what other main deck monsters you can take out for it. It cannot be normal summon or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by sending any number of Duston monsters you control to the graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card's attack and defense each become equal to the number of monsters sent to the graveyard for its summon times 1000. Your opponent cannot flip or special summon any monsters or activate any set spell or trap cards on the field. If you control more monsters than your opponent does, destroy this card. So the play here is, once you get rid of all your Dustons, you have your big boss monster Star Duston, and then you've left your opponent with a bunch of other Duston monsters that you can destroy, and then with each Duston monster that you destroy on your opponent's field, depending on which one it might have been that you destroyed, you'll gain the additional card effect of when it's sent to the graveyard, and then you'll have this powered up Star Duston to keep swinging into your opponent and their monsters. The big thing here also, though, that you want to make sure you have some sort of resource to at least be able to swing into your opponent's big monsters, and that's where Star Dustin can hit some pretty big numbers, but never exceed the number of monsters that your opponent has either. Most of the time, they'll try to link summon away those monsters and then just make it so if you have the equal amount of monsters, you won't be able to worry about that. So never go above the 1 of count, which will be the majority of what they can keep on the field with all the Dustin monsters you have. Now for added boss monsters, I do want to run 3 copies of Goblin King. I don't know where my other copies of this card went to. I know I had more copies of it, but you do want to run 3 of it. It's while you control another Fiend-type monster, this card cannot be attacked, and the attack and defense of this card equal to the number of Fiend-type monsters on the field, excluding this card, times 1,000. So if you give you and your opponent a equal number of 4 Dustin monsters on each side of the field, and you summon out your Goblin King, that will make this card 8,000 attack, and if you happen to leave one of the Dustin monsters in attack position on your opponent's side of the field, swinging into it with Goblin King, that could be enough for the winning condition for you in this deck. So 3 Goblin King are definitely necessity. I just have a green Dustin and a yellow Dustin fitting in for the other spots, but it's definitely a 3 of just for the powerhouse it can be. And also 3 copies of Stygian Security. When this card's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 level 1 Fiend monster from your deck. So this can be another way to special summon out the Goblin King onto the field, or an easier access to cards like House Dustin to have on the field also. If your opponent swings into the Stygian Security and destroys it, you can then summon the face-up House Dustin on the field for them to then destroy also. And also for the other main deck monsters, 3 copies of Stygian Street Patrol, with this card having the banish effect from the graveyard. So if you can set this card up in the graveyard, a lot of the times my best setup is to have it in the hand and then discard it for the cost of some of the nightmare monsters, because then I can use the banish effect in the graveyard to give me a special summon of a Fiend type monster with 2,000 or less attack from my hand. So I can use this card to summon out the Goblin King onto the field without having to take up my normal summon as well, and then go for the bigger attack play for all the different Fiend monsters I have on the field. And lastly, for the main deck monsters, 3 copies of Yugioh cannot be special summoned when it's normal summon or flip face up. You can target 1 level 1 monster in your graveyard and special summon that target, but banish it when this card leaves the field. And once per turn during the end phase, if this card is normal summon or flip face up, return to the hand, being the effect for a spirit monster. But this just helps with Link 2 plays in the extra, just being able to summon back a level 1 monster onto the field, and then using the 2 of them for a Link 2 resource. It helps to extend some of the other plays with the extra deck that you can do thanks to this card. And moving on now to the spells. We do run a high monster count, but the Monster Mash definitely does work together with all the many different Fiend monsters, whether we're setting up for our bigger Dustin attack play or the bigger Goblin King play, or just relying on going into the many resources thanks to cards like House Dustin. For the spell cards, we're running 3 copies of Where Art Thou. If you control level 1 monster, add 1 level 1 monster from your deck to your hand, and during the end phase of the turn, take 2,000 damage if you did not normal summon the added monster or a card with the same name after this effect. I would say it's the best way to search out Star Dustin to your hand, just because you can add this card. Yes, you will take the damage from Where Art Thou, but then you have this powerhouse and also the potential of having the many level 1 monsters on the field to send with this card to set up the play that I mentioned before. And since we're special summoning out a lot of Dustin monsters, to be able to continue those plays, we're running 2 copies of Pot Avarice, just so we can recycle the Dustin monsters back into the main deck to then redraw 2 cards again, but then also potentially be able to special summon them all back out again, with one of the ones that you want to special summon being House Dustin. Don't forget, with House Dustin, this can be one of the cards that you summon out onto your field as well without having any of the restrictions of the other Dustin monsters. And we're also running 2 copies of Unexpected Die. It's just another resource grabber for you to be able to summon out the White Dustin onto the field. Once again, a monster with no restrictions for any of your plays. And also the 2 copies of Piraeus Map, adding a monster at the beginning of your main phase 1, a monster with 0 attack from your deck to your hand, but half your life points after adding it to your hand. So with this card, you can just add a monster with 0 attack. It's a Goblin King search. You can sadly not add Star Dustin since it does not have 0 attack. It has the question mark attack and defense, but you can also add cards like your House Dustin, White Dustin, whatever you want off of the Piraeus Map. I would say it's just a better search for your Goblin King to be able to have the search power of this card easily in a spell. And for the rest of the spells, we're running one copy of 1-for-1. This card just searches out the whole deck, so very useful there. The one copy of Monster Reborn, and the one copy of Call by the Grave for the spell lineup. The only trap I'm running in the deck, and I was actually testing around some numbers of cards like Duston Mop and also Duston Roller. This is another searcher, just being able to, when it's destroyed by opponent's card effect. So the more of this card that you wanted to run, you can take out some cards, mixing them around like the Unexpected Dies and also the Piraeus map if you wish, to increase the numbers of rollers and mops you run in the deck. But this is a card that you're relying more on your opponent. So if I were to run it, I would be iffy on the numbers I want to run, because once again, it's a card that can restrict your opponent from using a monster they control to be used for a Fusion Synchro Xyz summon, but when it's mostly used is when it's destroyed while set on the field, because then it allows you to add a Duston card, giving you an easy search for any of the cards you need, especially the go-to boss monster in the deck. Moving on now to the extra deck. Now, with the restrictions we have for the good majority of our Duston monsters, I'm running full Link monster lineup for the extra deck. So 2 copies of Link Kuriboh, with the majority of level 1 monsters we're running in the deck. This is just an easy card to get out for an answer to stop an opponent's attack for more of the stall game. The 1 copy of Link Spider for the White Duston special summon. 1 Underclock Taker for the attack lowering. 1 Nightmare Phoenix and 1 Nightmare Cerberus. These are very useful for the discard of the Stygian Street Patrol when in your hand, as I mentioned before. And then the 1 IP Masquerena and the 1 copy of Lena, the Light Charmer, the Lustrous for the Link 2 monsters. For the Link 3 monsters, 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, the 1 copy of Triple Burst Dragon, and the 1 copy of Decode Talker for the variety of Link 3 monsters you can go into. And for the Link 4s, the 1 Topologic Bomber Dragon, the 1 Saryuja, and the 1 Apollosa. If you want to run Access Code Talker, you can always take out the Bomber Dragon for that spot, just preference with that. I like the special summon power you can get with Topologic Bomber Dragon to then be able to take out all of the opponent's monsters that you summon, being their Duston monsters on the field, and then still keeping the Link 4 monster that you summoned out with your own. And then the 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, another way for you to use your opponent's Duston resources, being able to take one of those monsters on the field that they summoned out to use for this card's Link summon also. As for some of the go-to plays in the deck, this deck is really one that relies on the destruction of House Duston, because then once this card is destroyed, you'll get your Duston resources out on the field. So you want to summon on your side of the field, I would say, the more useful Dustons, and then give your opponent the equal number of ones on their side of the field, but the ones that are less beneficial for them to have on their side of the field also. But it has to be an equal amount on both sides of the field, so remember that. But with the maximum number, you could potentially go 5 on each side as well. But with this play, you're going to rely more on the 5 of summon when you want to go for a Link summon, because then you have 5 monsters to go for any of the resources you want on the field. So with this play, you need 2 or more effect monsters for the summon. You can use your 5 Duston monsters that you summoned out thanks to the destroyed House Duston to then summon out your Topologic Bomber Dragon. And then with this, you can use your final Duston monster to go into a summon of either Link Kuriboh or Link Spider. Summoning it to the arrow that the Bomber Dragon is in, you'll destroy all monsters in the main monster zone. Also, other monsters cannot attack for the rest of this turn. But in the process, if your opponent had any other monsters on the field, it will destroy those ones in the main monster zone, meaning you at least have your 1 Link 4 resource still on the field, and you were able to wipe out your opponent's field thanks to this card. If you go for more of the summon play with the same 5 of on either side of the field, you'll have your resources here, and then the 5 on your opponent's field. Now this play will be for you if you have the Star Duston in your hand, because then you will send your 5 Duston to the graveyard, summoning out your Star Duston, and then you've restricted your opponent because they cannot special summon or set or flip any other monsters or activate any set spell or traps they have. And then if they have them in this play, you'll either have to change the battle position of your opponent the following turn of their Duston monsters, monsters. Otherwise, you can swing for some pretty big numbers into your opponent's other monsters, which is very good because if your opponent, let's say, destroys your Duston monster, summoning out these monsters, and they don't have enough of a resource to potentially get rid of all the Duston monsters with the cards they may have in their extra deck, depending on the extra deck that you're going up against, they may only be able to get rid of a couple Dustons here and there, and then on your following turn, with the ones that you summoned onto their field in attack position, you can get rid of your 5 Dustons, summoning out Star Duston, and then swinging into that other monster they may have on the field that they couldn't change the battle position of, or they just couldn't get rid of on the field. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. It's a really fun deck. I always love updating it. I can't remember the last time I have updated the Duston deck on the channel, but I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.